Okay, so in the last session, this is roughly where we were. We had our flexible box layout, images that click on and bring a video up, with a header and a footer. Okay, and where we want to be going is to make that work. And we're also going to split the file up like we did towards the end of the last session. So we've got a separate JavaScript function and a separate CSS file, just for order's sake, really, to make it easier to understand. Currently working in Brackets, which is an open source code editor, which you might find useful for doing your work at home if you haven't got access to Dreamweaver. Okay, so I'll do a quick run through the site again. The HTML is pretty straightforward. We've got the head and the body, and then the script we've put in afterwards, and where we're aiming to be anyway. So in the head, previously we had our CSS just put in itself. There we go, like so. And now we are working with just a link to that file, where we set the relationship. It's a style sheet, and the type, text CSS. We can actually do without the relative if we wish, but it's useful to have a meaningful explanation as to what the link is. So that's the head. Document titles there too. And in the body, all we've really got is the header. And what I've done is, rather than working with a background image, I've decided to work with an image straight in the page. This will mean that the image can be scaled rather than falling off the page as a background image would. So now, with an image in the header, when we resize it, as so, the image is getting smaller and larger based upon that, with the rest of the body being flexible too. You'll also notice in this version, I've got video clips playing instead of images. Now this would work quite well if you created just a very short loop video, a few seconds long, if that just looped in there, and you could make it respond so that when you roll over an image, still image, that it maybe changes to that video, or it could be the video element and you autoplay it. I haven't actually handled that yet, but the videos that they're playing. So in the article, as we had previously, I'll just collapse some of these things, we've now got inside of the sections, I'll just leave one of those open, a video tag instead of the image tag. Now I've stuck with the ID we used previously and the class, although I would eventually change that maybe to section video and section video numbered. They're set to auto play, but equally they could be set to not auto play by taking that little bit out. So if I just scroll on to the fifth one, you'll notice it shouldn't actually be auto playing, so that must be this one here. So that's down to preferences, how you would handle that. It's quite useful to collapse your HTML tags when you've got quite a lot of content in them, as we have. We've got a fair bit of text in some of these paragraphs. At the end, the footer's still there. I haven't really done much with that. You would maybe put your name in after that, created by. And we close the body, and then the script comes afterwards. So what I've done is I've taken most of the script that I've created and put it into a separate file called film site functions. with the exception of what are known as event listeners. So to make things happen, we need to tell things to listen for things in its simplest way. How we access them is pretty standard, that we speak to the document and then we find something by its ID, stipulate the ID, so in this case section image 1 through to 6, and we tell them each to listen for something happening to themselves. So when we click on section image 1, we will then run through a series of instructions which are labeled load trailer. They've all got this action. We've also got one other for an ID called close player, which is listening for itself being clicked again and closing the trailer. And on the video player, in a slightly different format, we are listening for the unended event. This could be written in this format too. We could tell player to add event listener, put ended, and then close trailer, similar to what we have in this line here. And so this is a more shorthand version, but it's only available to certain elements. And that is so that when the player's finished playing, it will just close the trailer window and we'll be back at square one again, so that people don't necessarily have to click on the close to get back to the main menu, as it were. And see that in practice, say for example, this one. If I just take it to the end.
If you'll excuse me, I gotta get back to slacking off.
And just watch the last few seconds through. When it gets to the very, very end, which will be any time now. There we go. Takes us straight back. And then if we were to play it again, back to the start. Okay. So the main thing to be aware of is I've included or put my CSS and JavaScript files inside of a folder called ink. And ink is stored within the root of the website. The root being the main folder, of course. And you'll see that there as well, ink / that just refers to the folder that we are looking for. There's another shortcut that you probably need to know eventually, which is that if you're talking to something from within another folder, so a subfolder, say for example we want to reference something from filmsite.css, we would need to use a shortcut called, or not dot, just basically using dot. Best example of that might be in header image, where you would put a URL in for a background image, for example, and instead of it saying ink, it would probably say dot / and then images. Notice how it's pointing to levels above where I am at the moment. Okay. So the CSS we've gone through extensively. So in short, we set a percentage size for the body width. It's positioned in the center. I've taken away the margin at the bottom of the header. I scaled the image inside of the header, so that's a new rule, so that it resizes every time we resize the browser window. So that makes it work quite well in a mobile device. We have hidden using display none, H1, rather than using opacity, which I've done previously. That does cause some issues. Using the flexible box on items within the main article so that they are repositioned. Fixing the position of the player container, which holds the video and the link to close the video. So that's set to full size. It's invisible until we tell it otherwise. And its contents are centered, so it too will be flexible when we change the display. We tell the link where it's going to live, top right hand corner, put a cursor on. We tell it to underline whenever we hover over it with a mouse. Setting the sections to 30%, the minimum width 350. Could be slightly bigger or smaller, really. You could also have rules that respond to different screen sizes. Again, changing the color, playing with the section image, or in this case, video. So it's quite interesting to see that we can clip a video into a circle, and that's the end of the CSS. JavaScript, on the other hand, is very new, and this is what we'll be focusing on. So we've got a variable, and this will be the first time we've really meaningfully encountered a variable. A variable stores information. It allows us to manipulate information, and fundamentally that is how we make games and interactive media work. So in this case, we're using a type of variable known as an array. An array can store several values, which is why it's incredibly useful. Not only that, but those values can have names or be referenced using a name. And this is known as the key. So we have a key and a value, and it saves us having to have several different variables. We can just refer to one and then its key inside. So this is another way of adding information to an array. We tell it what the key is going to be, and then what its contents are going to be using the equals and the speech marks. And all these are video file names with their extensions as well for the ones that are used in the video. We've then got a function which essentially runs a list of instructions as and when we call it. And the formation for a function is the keyword function, the name of the function, which we define, and you've got to be consistent in its use. And then in some brackets, these are known as arguments in JavaScript. They're essentially things that are required or that are needed for the function to run. I find it useful to store information about the function when it's been triggered in a variable labeled e. And this means that we can take the ID of the thing that's being clicked and put it into a new variable and then use it. It saves on having long strings. So whilst we only use ID once in this function, in some functions you would maybe use it several times, and in which case the benefits of doing this would be much more obvious. Again, a variable for the path, which is where we manipulate some information. So what we're doing is we're manipulating the information that's available. We're adding in videos / so that when we get the file name from one of these values, it becomes a path to that video. We then add it on to the value for film array and populating that with ID. The ID we get from the HTML element that's being clicked. So for example, section image 1, when that is clicked, we will then take this file name, put it onto that, and then we will change the source of the video player to equal this path. And so it's in real terms, it's basically just loading a video, but doing it through code, so that it's automatic and dynamic. And there's the key, is that it's something that can be done based on user interaction, or like we do, it could be based upon time. We could create a playlist, for example. Once we've set the path, we then tell the player to play. We make the container change its display from none to flex, so it appears. That's pretty much it, apart from we add the close trailer where we tell the player to pause, and we set the display of the container to none, as it is to start off with. So that's pretty much all the JavaScript with the exception of setting the event listeners in the HTML file. And as we've gone through those, so we've got an event listener for every image. This ID is passed when it's clicked to the functions that are being asked for. So in this case, load trailer. And that pretty much ties up the loop. And then when we look at that, you can see the video playing through. And there we go. Everything works like an application. As I alluded to earlier, we could put some minor amendments in there. So let's say, for example, we go back to the body of the document and just change some of the video files. I'm just going to use Control F to find and replace autoplay. So if I can find all and just delete it. You see it scrolls through all of them. I'm going to change it to find and replace. And just replace that with that. So I can leave it to be blank. Replace all, we'll just take it all out. And then when we go back, refresh it, all of those look like they're images. We could then run through the process of creating a function to handle that. I just need to get rid of that. I seem to have put some extra information in. Not quite sure how that's got in there, but I'm going to get rid of it. Okay, that seems okay. So in the JavaScript, what I would do is define a new function. Usually I like to keep things ordered, so I'll leave my video functions together. And let's just say preview video. And what we're going to want to do is to refer to the video by its ID and then tell it to play. So in theory, that should work a bit like this. Set the ID to equal the ID of the target that we've clicked upon. I'm just going to console log this now to check that that's what comes out. We'll test that in the browser. We then need to add an event listener to all of the video tags, section image 1 through to 6, sorry. And we can actually achieve that, thankfully, with a bit of copying and pasting, because we've already got 6 event listeners. So I can just copy those, put a little bit of space in, and then with each of these, I'll just change it once. So that's going to be mouse over in this language. And instead of it being load trailer, I'll call it preview video, I think it was called. Let's double check that. Yeah, preview video. Names have got to be consistent. So I can just copy that and paste into all of them. Equally, we could find and replace, but I've started it manually now. I'll finish it that way. You've got to be careful with copying and pasting values, because if you've made a mistake, then you will magnify that mistake because it will occur more frequently. So what we're hoping is that when we save and test that, and in earlier versions of Dreamweaver, you will have to save your changes because you won't have live preview. So I'll just bring up the console, and hopefully when I hover over an image or a video,
I think
we're going to have a bit of a problem due to them being within this section and a bit of a clash with the event. Just have another look at that. Okay, there wasn't actually anything wrong. I simply just forgot to refresh the page. So yeah, with the event listener added for listening for mouseover, we get the information coming out on the console. As you can see there on the right, it tells me which image I've rolled over. So we know that, and in knowing that, in theory, we should be able to simply tell it to play. So rather than it being the ID, we're probably just going to tell e.target to play. Save that, give it a bit of a refresh. And there we go, hover over plays. Then you would just handle that with a function to end the preview. So we don't actually need the information about the ID because we're targeting the element directly. So instead of it being playing, we're just going to pause it. Test that. When we've added in the event listeners, so now we need another 6 event listeners. So quite often this is where legwork is involved. So rather than it being mouse over, it will be mouse out. Rather than it being preview video, it will be end preview. And then we're just hoping to copy that and find and replace. So we'll take if that actually it's going to be too much of a mess about if the find and replace keeps on disappearing. So let's do this. And then it should be a case of hey presto, roll over, roll out, roll over,
Cannonball!
press it, roll out. Now because we're sending the video to a different player,
Cannonball!
it won't match up with the position of the roll over, roll out. But I think that's a small price in this case. Oh yeah, this one looks like it's not working because it's got that green sign up for a long time. There we go. That works for all the videos. And with a little bit of editing, you could create a little loop, as mentioned previously. That's pretty much the end of that example. Okay.